Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to a vlog video, or discussion video, or whatever you want to call it, of where I'm talking about Video Game Monthly. So, this month is basically the last month that I did Video Game Monthly. And, I figure I'd go ahead and talk about my personal thoughts on Video Game Monthly, as well as to, who would best fit the description of whoever wants to go for it and stuff like that. So, first and foremost, for those of you that don't know, Video Game Monthly is a shipping facility, much like Loot Crate and stuff like that, where they basically ship you a box of games, and it's retro video games. And they range anywhere from the Atari 2600 to NES, SNES, all the way up to PS3, Xbox 360, Wii titles, as well as PSP and DS titles. And that was the most recent update they did this year. Before, it was PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and the Game Boy Advance games. They recently updated it to where they could do the later parts of it. And, so just go ahead and let you guys know on a particular subject at hand. I am a selective game collector. I basically have a wish list of games that I want to get eventually for these said consoles. Like, for example, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, some GameCubes, maybe one or two Xbox games, but then that's about it on my end. Delmar, on the other hand, has a much longer list of titles that he's wanting to get for the console that he has. And he's basically a retro collector, you know, he collects retro games and everything like that. So, for the most part, anything that I don't get, he ends up getting that I might end up playing later on. Anyway, for example, the SNES, the Super Mario RPG. That one I actually do want to play sometime later on, but who knows when I'll get to play that, but we'll see how things go. Aside from that, though, the service for Video Game Monthly has been really good. It's been really promising. I've actually enjoyed Video Game Monthly to some degree. I will say that it's nice to have that feeling of surprise as to, like, what game you're going to get out of and everything like that. And sometimes you'll be blown away. You'll be like, all of a sudden, you'll get this miraculous game that you've been wanting to get for a long time, and you finally get it. And then there'll be some months that'll be like, this is something I probably would have gotten eventually, and stuff like that. And it's like, it wasn't a bad service. I actually do enjoy it. I will say, though, that the only downside is that it lists every title. This includes some of the more lesser titles, like the sports games, hunting games, and stuff like that, followed by Japanese titles. And while that's cool and all, that does not interest me in particular. Like I said before, I actually have a wish list of games that I'm wanting to get eventually, and the majority of them are basically, like, I want to say, the list consists of at least close to, if not maybe less than 10% of the entire PlayStation 2 / PlayStation 1 library of games that they have. Now, what's fun fact, though, is that Delmar wanted to have an entire collection of N64 games. There was, however, one problem. Once you actually start to look at the library of games that that particular console has, the majority of them are either chunk games or sports games. In this case, the N64 had a bunch of sports games that was released for the console. And Delmar was like, okay, maybe not a complete collection. Which, honestly, I wouldn't stop him if he wanted to do an N64 collection, since the N64 was our first console. So it's like, if Delmar wanted to, he could, but thankfully he doesn't want to, so that's a good thing. But being a Video Game Monthly subscriber, this would be perfect for any retro collector. And by any retro collector, I mean any collector that's collecting any number of retro games. Like, for example, if you're getting like anywhere between the NES, SNES, or even Famicom, or any type of retro game in general, any number of retro games, this service would be perfect for you, because then you're actually going to be able to get any wide variety of games that you're going to get from the main segment that you've selected. If you're like me, on the other hand, and you basically pick out like maybe 2 or 3 consoles that you're wanting to get it from, admittedly, there's not going to be a big lineup. Especially if it's like PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3s. I've noticed that when it comes to the console gen, anywhere between the PS2 onward, the library gets harder and harder to navigate as to good game titles. And that's not to say that they've been bad. No. In fact, the PS2 is still a dominated console. But when you go to look at the library, you forget how many games there were made for that console. And the majority of them being more or less games. So it's one of those like, it's a service that's good, but not a service for everyone. And I believe that if you're a retro game collector and you collect any retro game and you're wanting to complete your collection, then go for it. The service is really good, and I highly recommend it for anyone who does collect retro games and who's not able to go around to collect retro games. Me, on the other hand, I would rather hang on to the extra $35 that I have been spending for the Video Games Monthly that I have, waiting on it, searching for games that I might want to get, and have a better chance of actually finding these titles that I've been wanting to get, rather than go through Video Game Monthly and have that awkward chance of like getting a good deal and stuff like that. And it's only a good deal if you get that one game that would cost you like close to $50 to get. That would be the only chance that you would get, but the rarity of that happening is very slim. In fact, I want to say that I was like 1 or 2 times whenever I actually scored evenly with my box, and that's with shipping. So to say that this service is perfect, not necessarily. And honestly, if I had the money, I wouldn't mind trying out I think they had the 10 plus game method, which is like $80. So if I had the money, I wouldn't mind going for a more game subscription service. But because I am tight on money at this moment right now, especially since I moved in and stuff like that, it's one of those things where it's like, it's probably best just to go ahead and cut it off from there, and then proceed on to my normal method of collecting video games, because like I said, I am a selective game collector. Eventually I will add in other games from the library that I'm looking at, and eventually add on to stuff. But for the most part, I actually got a pretty good library of games that I didn't think I would be interested in getting, much less playing. You know, recently I'd gotten the Namco Museum Volume 3 collected. In all honesty, I didn't think I would be interested in it, but I might actually pick up the other volume sets just to have the complete set. I may want to update the case, however, though, because unfortunately it's just the game and not the actual case with it. But I might want to update the case to where that way I actually have the case to go with the other 4 whenever I do get them eventually. And then of course, I did find like 2 or 3 games that I actually thought was like, this actually looks like it'd be fun to play, you know? Just something that I could pick up and play with a friend or two, and we just have fun with it, you know? It's one of those like game nights, you know? It's a stupid ideal that some people have come up with, but honestly, whenever you're looking at retro games and stuff like that, it's pretty entertaining for the most part. In fact, me and Delmar tried to do a game night with our neighbor that we have. We talked about it and everything like that, and all of a sudden they were like, well, what about like the SNES or the NES? And Delmar was like, I've got them. And they were like, oh, cool. So we were going to try to play the SNES on the TV. Well, for some reason, we've had an issue with it to where we couldn't really get it to show up on TV, or if we did, it looked like it was too zoomed in. I don't know if it's because of the TV issue or what, but I'm going to try to look into it and try to get it fixed one way or another. But aside from that, though, hopefully it won't be too much of a trouble. But aside from that point, the ideal concept of collecting retro games is still strong with me. It's just not as fulfilling or overwhelming as most people have it. You know, most people, they're going to go for like every single game out there, whereas me, it's going to be certain titles. And I do want to try to get more invested in game collecting. Like right now, me and Delmore are actually looking into wanting to go into the flea market more often. We went in there last month, but unfortunately because of the fact of the season, not many stores, not many places were open at the time. So me and Delmore was like, okay, well, we'll just wait it out until it looks like it can be open, or we'll wait a later hour. Because we went in there like at 7, and it was kind of bare minimum. They had like maybe 10 or 12 stores. They had 10 or 12 booths opened up at the time. So who knows? Maybe not. Who knows? We'll wait and see what goes on later on. But our friend James McGann, on the other hand, he is a retro game collector himself, and he mostly collects NES titles. And I think he said he's got like over 200 titles already so far, which is very commendable actually. If you're able to get all of those games, that's very good, you know. But from what he said, it gets harder and harder as you complete your collection, because then you get closer to the rarity titles. The rarity titles ends up getting more and more expensive, and that's understandable. It is. And especially looking into the PS2 games, because there are some games on the PS2 that do get expensive because of its rarity. For example, I think the game was Phantasy Star, I believe is what it's called, and that one is considered to be a rare title as well. A friend of mine, Gothbat, he said that if I ended up actually getting the game, that I was to give it to him. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, let me play it first, and then I'll give it to you. No problem. He's like, cool. But I never actually got it. And I was like, the likely chance of me getting a rare game like that are 0 to none. I doubt I would ever be able to get lucky on that draw. But you never know. Sometimes you may get lucky, sometimes not. In fact, my favorite moment, and that one made me kind of decide to go for a complete physical collection of Final Fantasy titles, is to eventually get all the Final Fantasy titles that I can. And that was whenever, like, on that particular month, I gotten Final Fantasy Anthology, brand new in its case. And I was like, that's actually really awesome. I'm glad I got this. So now I've got Final Fantasy 5 and 6 physically. And I was like, this is actually pretty cool. I like this. This is awesome. And then, all of a sudden, the next month I had Final Fantasy Origins, but it was the disc only, but I was very happy with it too. I was like, I got Final Fantasy Origins with Final Fantasy 1 and 2. This is awesome. And I thought to myself, if I ended up getting Final Fantasy or Final Fantasy Tactics, or even Final Fantasy Chronicles for that matter, I'd be practically set. I'd be happy. I'd be thrilled. I didn't, but it was cool just to have the 2 months be like Final Fantasy titles. Those were like the best moments out there. Was just like, all of a sudden I got this score, and it's just, oh, this looks cool. This is awesome. But aside from that, though, Video Game Monthly, if you are a retro game collector of any kind, and you're looking to collect any games whatsoever, Video Game Monthly would be that subscription service that I would recommend to you. And if you're able to, I would go for the second tier up, which is the 4-game collection, rather than the 3-game collection that I've got. So that way you're able to get 4 or 5 games from the package deal, because every so often they'll do a 1-up or a 2-up where you'll get 1 or 2 extra games at a time. And for me, I believe I always gotten a 1 or 2-up every single time. With Delmar, he got it like maybe about a good 9 out of 12 times he gotten the 1 or 2-ups. Every so often he wouldn't get it, but he would always be excited to get one, because he always had a massive title as to what games he was getting it for. Me, my limited run was PS1s, PS2, as well as GameCube titles. So I was like, this wasn't too awful bad, but at the same time it was like, it was alright. For the most part it was. So, would I recommend it to anyone? definitely, I would definitely recommend it. It just, for me in particular, because of me being a particular collective, it wouldn't work for me. For example, if anyone is like looking for specific games out there, this probably wouldn't be the service for you. But if you're looking to get any game out there, then this would be perfect for you. So I would recommend it to you. So anyway, though, that's going to be it for this little vlog mini video about Video Game Monthly. Again, I liked the service, but because of the scarcity of like chances of getting like a big score or even getting like pretty good games out there, which again, I gotten games that I was like, didn't think I was going to play this, but I'm going to play it eventually, so. But it was still good while it lasted, and I had fun with it regardless. So, but thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Take care, guys.